I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Silly Jedi, silly Jedi.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
You must unlearn what you have learned.
Hello, what have we here?
Hello there.
At last! Where have you been?
Nice of you guys to drop by.
Ah, good. New acquisitions.
I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this.
Hey everybody, welcome to Star Wars Car Talk, the Jedi Toy Master podcast where we sit in the car and we talk some Star Wars. I'm Maurice Mercado, and I hope you guys had a wonderful week. I hope you're back together again. I hope your brains are back together again after having everything exploded and spilled out because of everything that happened in the second episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Yeah, I know. It was crazy. Now, I figured this week I'm not gonna do another breakdown of the episode. I did one last week for the second episode, and I did one for the first episode. But I'm not really. I don't want to do that for every episode. This isn't a a Mandalorian episode breakdown video. I will touch on stuff. I'll mention things that happen in the episodes, but as general Star Wars knowledge, basically, things that happen in this show is canon. But I want to also be sensitive to those that maybe are like a week behind or haven't been able to catch the Mandalorian the third episode yet. So, I'm still going to give the spoiler warning because I don't want to be kind of tied to that. But I'm just not going to talk about the entire episode and break everything down. What I am going to talk about this week is, it's something that I was actually hypothesizing with my brother this past Friday when we watched this episode of The Mandalorian, which, again, I am horrible at remembering the titles of these episodes. So this is the third episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian, and I believe it's chapter 11 or 12. Anyway, I'm going to put it right there. So that's what it is right there. That's the title. That's the chapter or episode. I forget. I'm sorry. The excitement of this show has me to where my brain, it's almost like Men in Black, where the episode is that flash of light that nebulizes me, and I forget everything that happened before the episode, including the title. So it is what it is. But a lot of amazing things happened in that episode, and one of the things that I was talking to with my brother, who was over watching it this past week, is a little theory that I have, because he was asking me, what he was a little confused. He's like, wait, when does this take place? Like, where are we in the timeline? So I had to kind of explain to him, this is about, from what I understand, it's like 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So 5 years. So you figured, the rebels have had time to regroup and organize, and after all the celebration, all the partying that we saw all over the galaxy and on Coruscant and all that, now it was time for the politicians and those that have been waiting for this day to come to kind of come to the table and figure out, how are we going to do this? How are we going to reorder the Empire? Now, I know there's expanded universe books that are no longer canon that kind of went into a lot of this stuff, a lot of, there's the Thrawn trilogy, there's Heir to the Empire. All of these novels were basically, they were the sequel trilogy in a way. Those were the stories that we got. And to my shame, I remember just reading, just less than a handful of these stories. I don't think growing up I ever completely read any of them. I remember checking them out of the library and starting some of them. I remember one summer, my brother and I, when he really got into Star Wars, and we watched the original trilogy, and we were playing with the Power of the Force 2 figures, he was just like, okay, what else? And I was just like, there isn't anything else. So, we got the we went to Funko Land. That was before GameStop. We went to Funko Land and we got a used copy of like Super Empire Strikes Back. And we were playing Super Empire Strikes Back. And then he was like, all right, what else? So I'm like, well, I think, there's books. So we went to the library and we got these books, and, we started kind of reading through them. I mean, this was when my brother, he's 7 years younger. So he was a little kid. He was a very young reader. He was like, these books were a little bit too tough for him. So I would read some of it to him. I would read some. And we kind of like, unfortunately, we kind of skimmed through them just to kind of get the gist of what was happening. And, there was no YouTube. It's not like I could put on, do a search on YouTube or on Google. There was barely internet at that point. So it's like not like we could go online and get like the Cliff Notes or get a video explaining what these stories are about. Like, I mean, we have these amazing channels now like Star Wars Theory and so many others, Star Wars Explained, so many amazing YouTube channels that we got folks that are dedicated to explaining everything Star Wars, and not just sitting in a car talking about it, but actually like, they're very, very, very knowledgeable. They're Grand Jedi Masters. I mean, they're on the Jedi Council of, they're up there with Dave Filoni, as far as their knowledge of Star Wars and all the stories and how they all connect and everything. So all that to say is, we didn't really get that. We got those stories, but now they're not canon anymore. So what do you do now? So we don't really have a lot of information as to what has happened these last 5 years. So the Mandalorian kind of just picks up in this place where the one thing we do know for sure is that in the Outer Rim and in the outskirts and on all the forgotten planets like Tatooine and whatnot, now that the Empire isn't around, that militant, enforcing entity, now all the criminals that were kind of had one hand behind their back don't have their hands tied anymore. And now, there's no organized system yet. So everything is kind of up in the air, or everything is kind of in kind of working its way to becoming a government, a new republic. But how do you do that when you have literally all these planets over all this expanse? How do you organize governments and all that stuff? So anyway, I'm not going to get to that intricacy of that stuff, but the fact is the galaxy is kind of in a rough shape right now. Things are not going great. The New Republic is doing their best, and as we saw in the previous episodes, we saw those two X-Wing pilots. They're kind of like out on patrol, and they're patrolling. And last season we saw that prison cell, ship or whatever that was in space that they tried to, enter or whatever, like the little prison heist one. Excuse me. And so, things are rough, but what we are realizing is that there are still these stories that go all the way back to Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, which Rebels takes place before A New Hope, presumably. Well, it does. And before Rogue One. So we are introduced to more Mandalorians and what is happening to the Mandalorian. So this past week's episode really shed some light and kind of reminded us. I think it was a nice reminder, because I think we've been so caught up in the story about the child, the baby Yoda, and the Mandalorian trying to protect this child, that we kind of forgot that the show is called The Mandalorian. And we kind of sidelined our quest to find out who he is, and and why he became the Mandalorian, and what happened to his planet and his family, and like all that stuff. that stuff hasn't been told. Those stories haven't been told. We've gotten snippets of it, but now we're starting to realize we went back to that. So it was a great episode this past week where we're still on the mission, which is getting the child to the Jedi. And we are still on the second part of the mission that helps us get to the first mission, which is find some Mandalorians so that they can help and lead us to find these Jedi. But also we forgot about that third part of this show, which is the mystery of the Mandalorian, the mystery of who he is, why he's the way he is. Why doesn't he take this helmet off? Why is this the way? Who said this was the way? So this episode really like opened it up a little bit in a lot of ways. I mean, the fact that we got like Mandalorians from Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels involved in this show, and the fact that we got to see an Imperial like cargo ship that we first saw in Star Wars Rebels, the animated show, the entire episode, my jaw was like on the floor. So I am so interested in finding out like more about what happened to these other Mandalorian, to Night Owl, I think she is. Anyway, we get Bo-Katan in this episode, guys. I mean, spoiler alert, come on. And that was just an amazing thing. The fact that we got the same actress that did the voice in both Clone Wars and Rebels to do the live action version was amazing. But I kind of want to see a show just about the Mandalorian. Like, where were the Mandalorian during the sequel trilogy? Like, what happened there? What happened there? Where have they been? What happens when the Resistance comes around? Does the Resistance do the same thing that the Empire does and take control of Mandalore? Like, does she get the black saber at some point? Like, what so many questions that it's almost like I kind of wish that this show, The Mandalorian, would create spin-offs of other shows that take place in that time period between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy. And I kind of hope, but more than that, I wish, it's not going to happen, guys, but I wish that we could have like a bunch of spin-off shows on Disney Plus that have to do with these stories, and that they would all set up basically like almost like a retconning of the sequel trilogy. Like, imagine if you had all these shows basically lead up to them essentially retconning the sequel trilogy. And just like Disney said, oh, all that expanded universe stuff is not canon, it's Legends. Hey, what if the sequel trilogy is Legends? What if that is made Legends and we get like a new sequel trilogy where, you can't have Princess Leia and Han Solo in there, and what's to say that it has to be about them? I mean, it's the Skywalker saga. You can still have Mark Hamill in there. Mark Hamill could be the piece that carries a new sequel trilogy. Anyway, it's a crazy thought, it's a crazy theory, but I say all that to say this. I was telling my brother, and this is going to be a shorter episode this week, sorry guys, but I'm just going to get to the point right now. I think it would be amazing if Mark Hamill or Luke Skywalker made an appearance on The Mandalorian. Now, hear me out. This is 5 years after Return of the Jedi. So obviously, the character Luke Skywalker is 5 years older. He looks so different in Return of the Jedi than he did in A New Hope. So this is 5 years later. So now he's older. How about, you can totally get Sebastian Stan. I forgot his name. He was, Winter Soldier in the Marvel movies. It's been all over the internet. The guy has a really strong resemblance to a young Mark Hamill. It's not like they're twins, but if you give him a similar hair and you kind of do the makeup in a way where, I mean, you can get, I mean, he could be Luke Skywalker 5 years after Return of the Jedi. I'm just saying. So I think it's totally doable. I mean, you could even you can even maybe use him as a stand-in if you wanted to, and have like Mark Hamill do the voice and do a little bit of kind of like the CGI, like a little bit, to make him look more like Mark Hamill. I don't know if this actor would be for that, but I think you could get away with just having him play Luke Skywalker. I mean, we in films and on the screen, we don't see Luke Skywalker after Return of the Jedi. We pick up in The Force Awakens when he's like 40 years older. So we don't know what he looked like in between. I mean, we know the actor Mark Hamill, what he would look like in between those ages, but the character Luke Skywalker, we don't know. I mean, he's been, creating a new Jedi Order and all this stuff. So I think it would be amazing if at some point it gets to that place where we obviously are going to meet Ahsoka. But if we can then, the quest could then be, and maybe it doesn't happen this season. Maybe this season ends with him finally teaming up with Ahsoka, and their new mission is, we have to find Luke Skywalker. We need Luke Skywalker's help. And maybe, like I said, my theory is that this season will end with maybe Grand Moff Gideon being defeated, but the child gets kidnapped, and it ends with a cliffhanger where in season 3 the mission is to go rescue the child, and we also need to find Luke Skywalker. We need Luke Skywalker's help. So I think that's going to happen, and maybe even like a callback to the Mandalorians. We need the Mandalorians' help, and we get this like full-on battle, like a sequel to the Fall of Mandalore. We have the Rise of Mandalore, and we have the Mandalore fighting the remnants of the Empire, and we have Ahsoka, and maybe at the end Luke Skywalker shows up with a couple of young Jedi that he's been training. And I think that would be amazing. Guys, what do you think of my theory? Are we going to see Luke Skywalker at some point on The Mandalorian? Let me know. JediToyMasters@gmail.com. Star Wars Card Talk, Jedi Toy Masters on Instagram. Let me know. Guys, this is a short one this week. I hope you guys have a great week. Be safe. And, remember,
The Force will be with you, always.